Why is it, at the circus, that the musical clowns are the most beloved acts? Because their antics drag down to the sawdust-covered ground the tightrope walk of high musical art. A farting sousaphone with an exploding bell is an endless source of jubilation. Just before the first notes sound is when the orchestra's minions' sabotage lust is greatest. So strong is the temptation as all gather at the entrance to snip off a string with his needle-nosed pliers that he must knot his hands behind his back. The Philharmonizers' walking instruments, as I need not tell you, climb the steps, fiddling, droning, mewling. With one kick at the wooden ceiling overhead, the orchestra minion can strike both cellist and the cello. A little excerpt there from the first story, The Orchestra Minion, in Hermann Berger's Diabelli. This is translated by Adrian Nathan West. Those who are interested in the work of Hermann Berger, I have recorded a conversation with the translator, Adrian Nathan West, on the life and work of Hermann Berger. This is a review copy sent from Wakefield Press, so a big thank you to them, which is to be published in May of this year. Now, Berger gets stranger and stranger. The more one reads Berger's writing, the more one learns about him and himself and his own biography, and the more one's reluctance to commit to the usual biographical readings of text, one's reluctance to not commit to that, to finally give in to that, because Berger wears himself on his sleeve to a degree that you are forced, stylistically, to intrude into areas of thought, mind, and especially sexual feeling that would make even Sigmund Freud feel a tad nauseous at times. And you will see, hopefully, what I mean by that when I comment on the final story of 4 in this book, The Laughter Artist. And so this small short book that's it's coming in at 123 pages with some notes afterwards, with a short introduction by West, the translator, is 4 stories: The Orchestra Minion, Diabelli Prestidigitator, Zentgraf in the Mountains, or The Earthquake in Soglio, and The Laughter Artist. For me, the 2 standouts are Diabelli and The Laughter Artist. The Laughter Artist being one of the most hyper-honest and strangest short stories I've read. Berger's writing deals with a mixture of themes that, if they were taken alone, one might find them alchemically expansive, something that one can learn from, grow from, deal with, develop with, existentially engage with. So there is thematically a lot of escape from the self, what it is to hide, what it is to be behind a curtain, what is illusion, what is delusion, what it is to be deluded, who are these masses who enjoy magic and tricks and escapism. Equally, there is a sort of discernment around culture, around strange culture, around orchestras, and the feeling of a dark carnival, and magic tricks, and also genitology near the end in the Laughter Artists, and escapology, which is a big interest of Berger's. But equally, alongside this is a book steeped to such a degree in sexual anxiety around even the reality, even the existence of women, that one really wishes to keep Berger at arm's length, despite the fact, stylistically, you can't. But I want to begin with some excerpts from Diabelli that build this sense that not only are we dealing with this, nothing is what it is, there is a mask, there is a false self, everybody is hiding, but as per Berger's writing, as per his pessimism, his very noted pessimism, we are given the drum roll, we're given the badumts, and what that results in is impotence. The mask, Berger reveals the mask and then takes the mask off straight away. And what we are shown is the falseness itself. And it's a ghastly feeling, even if there isn't necessarily a monster there. And there's not anything like that really in Berger. But from Diabelli, this pertains, in a way, to Diabelli's crisis. I've conjured and conjured and conjured and squandered myself in the process. Began as a plucky schoolboy under the stage name Sant'Ambrogio, sawed women in half triumphantly as Angelo Mastabani, perfected the whirlwind as Gwendolen Mondelli, alias Graziani, alias Grazio Diabelli, etc. When a magician transforms professionally and acquires a new set of tricks, he changes his name as well, the better to incarnate his closing number. Who's who in our métier is a question that could keep an army of mystification specialists hard at work. With a change of tone I modulate myself, and in order Baron Kesselring to be sure of who I am when I speak to you, I must translate myself from Diabelli into Graziani, Graziani into Mondelli, Mondelli into Mastabani, and Mastabani into Sant'Ambrogio. And now I fear that at the apex of my career, there is no I left among the sheaves of alter egos to profess himself bankrupt, ruined. And when I make the climb down from the renown of Diabelli to Graziani's, from Graziani's to Mondelli's, and so on, I will stand there in the end empty-handed. And so the last chance I have left is to realize the dream of the great escapologist, to make Diabelli and his consorts vanish without recourse to the black box, artificial levitation or mirror play. At most like the Indian fakir on the rope, leaving my admirers behind in order to climb upward and dissolve into nothing. How that shall be done, ladies and gentlemen, I will leave to the imagination of each, to use a platitude from my apprenticeship and journeyman years with the buzzsaw. I have not forgotten I remain bound by an oath, which I took upon my acceptance, as Mastabani, in the magician's circle. I will never betray my art. But what if my art betrays me? Only linguistic trickeration could make me disavow my promise. Baron, my capitulation must be hidden as in a reversible image. Now, even though in this story, which is the Diabelli struggling with his identity as a magician and refusing the way it's written is a refusal for this Baron to perform, and instead has this discourse on escapology, on its sort of futile, impotent direction, its teleology, and then mentioning this final disappearing act. The final act of any escapologist is just to disappear, both as a self and as quite literally as Diabelli, as an act. But it would be wrong to contain the escapology traits and this sense of who exactly are we talking to here. Berger makes it clear in Diabelli, the short story, that we have Graziani, we have Mastabani, and we have all these alter egos that are being told by an alter ego, Diabelli, in explicitness, that he has lost himself. He has no idea who he's talking to. And so this is happening in all the stories. This is a book of tricks. This is a book of tricks. But something that Berger does, and I mean this in no coy way, is that, and he doesn't write this, but this is the metaphor of how I would approach Berger and what we might consider a Bergerian pessimism, especially around this escapology, this hiding of the selves and this trickery around exactly what it is we're seeing, even though we know it's false, and he's making it explicit. is a much like of a magic trick of, let's say, putting a live rabbit into a top hat. The Burgerian sort of dark paradox is that maybe the rabbit is placed into the hat and disappears, but the result of which is actually that the rabbit is like crushed to death in the table. The trick has still happened. The belief and understanding of that trick as a disappearing act has still happened. But Berger has this ability to reveal this dark underside without it becoming horror, without it becoming weird. But he draws that into an explicitly Freudian language of constant castration, constant, ceaseless symbols of castration and sexual anxiety, and especially impotence when it comes to women. And so the book itself, you approach it and you can't approach it. You know the stories. I mean, so for instance, we have these 4 stories. We have August Stram, who's a pianistic abortion. He's applying for the post of orchestra minion, despite being hard of hearing. So we're given a paradox and a strangeness there immediately. We, of course, have Diabelli. Then we have Anatole Zentgraf, who is a maniacal reader who is the alleged epicenter of an earthquake. And then this posthumous tale, The Laughter Artist, is an account of a nameless professional artist of cachinnation, the sexually tormented offspring of a genetologist mother, whose backstage visit induces a fatal culmination of his art. And this is a strange sort of Freudian biographical account of a child who, well, I will get to the excerpt on that. But each of these stories is the macabre, the carnivalesque elements of the macabre are removed. And it doesn't transform simply into gore, it doesn't transform into horror, it doesn't transform into weirdness. It equally isn't some simple kitchen sink realism. There is something specifically Burgerian in his ability to reveal these disgusting, grotesque moments, allow them to become real but not coyly kitchen sink real, and then this is sort of viscerally psychoanalytical reaction to being far too close to someone's unconscious, someone's sort of uncontrolled unconscious spewing out in borderline, in sort of spasms of some depth arising with lucidity that make enough narrative sense to go forward, to have this Bernhardian flow. But when you really scratch at the surface of them, you wonder where they've come from, how it is Berger could know himself to such a degree, unless he was sort of crucially very ill, which may very well be the case, considering, for those that don't know, he also wrote, and this is also from Wakefield Press, Tractatus Logico-Suicidalis on killing oneself, which is over 1,000 aphorisms on suicide, also translated by Adrian Nathan West. And then there's also, and I can't remember the publisher for this, so Archipelago Books. There's also Brenner, also, again, translated by Adrian Nathan West, which is, again, one of the more so biographical accounts. And so, given something that's sort of risen up from a horrible depth, that with the foundation of hidden selves and tricks, it's an uncomfortable book. One more excerpt from Diabelli here. The Kinder laissez-faire, the children, ai bambini, are the most thankless audience. As every master of the magical arts will tell you, for the young do not distinguish between reality and deceit. For them, even if the ball was just under the cup, it is perfectly natural when you palm it and it is no longer there. As a boy, I was fascinated by everything artificial, mimicked, alleged, impersonated, mirrored, puzzling, hallucinatory, phantasmagoric, but not reality, and especially not nature. I would busy myself for hours with a silver tin of Zweiback stamped with a medallion showing the image of a rococo fop holding in his hands a similar packet with an identical but much smaller oval. in which, with an identical fop, etc., the perpetuum mobile of the hollow tooth, inside which is hidden a letter detailing the story of the hollow tooth, caused me terrible unease. When I discovered, standing before the looking-glass, holding a hairdresser's mirror, behind my ear, that a person can multiply himself into infinity, I locked myself up in the bathroom, where my parents preened and primped. I tried out the necromancer's guise, incarnated the man of 1,000 tricks, to hide myself, to appear, to emerge from nothing, and then vanish back into it. My child's play, dear Baron, eschewed jump rope, hopscotch, dodgeball, or other such skylarking for existential bombshells of this kind. An aside, one time when my teacher asked what class of words were inflected, I gave him my answer, proper names, and when, with amusement, he challenged me to present the inflections of my own forename, Xaver, I derived, amid cackles, its comparative and superlative. Xavera, Xaverest, the Xaverest, of course, was I, and the children jeered me with this moniker. But for me, mad as it was, it became a mark of distinction. To the detriment of schoolwork, I brooded over the brain teasers that illustrated the Pestalozzi calendar, and at times, paradoxically, the calendar for the blind, the so-called Zollner illusion discovered by Professor Zollner in Leipzig on the occasion of the victory celebrations following the Franco-Prussian War, where the triumphal posts crowned with spirals of brushwood appeared to be standing aslant. The missing corner, the impossible staircase, the Necker cube, which are found at the back of the book. So, again, everything is made explicit to say you're not talking to who you think you're talking to, but equally Berger is speaking for himself. He's saying, I don't know who this is, I don't know who's speaking to you, I've been lost since day one. I'm interested in tricks, I'm interested in irreality. Berger has no interest in something so sickening in a way as to say, especially not nature, not reality. He's interested in mimicry, falseness, illusions, but he's not interested in reality. He's interested in what it is. He's interested in what it is to hide. That's his natural position is to disappear. And so, what exactly are we talking to? Who are we talking to? We don't know, and that generally just builds and builds and builds a sense of unease. But one of the most interesting short paragraphs, and this is, again, styled as Bernhardian, very, very long paragraph. Not fully Bernhardian in the sense the whole book is one paragraph, unbroken paragraph, but very long paragraphs with this Bernhardian flow, direct influence for Berger. But this is, again, from Diabelli, I think the most revealing Bergerian statement of the book. At around 5 or so years old, maybe only 4, I cut open an accordion with scissors because I wished to know, for once, the source of that music that brought me to tears. When I held the 2 halves of the bellows in my hand after the arduous work of destruction, I breathed. It came from nowhere. The ruby-red marbled housing, the mother-of-pearl buttons, the volutiform adornments of the grille, the blind arcade of the instrument's architecture. All this outer sophistication promised a secret center 1,000 times more refined. But no, just dusty pleats and stale air. This is what Berger does. This is what Berger does with, when we think about what the Zendgraf, this maniacal reader and a private scholar, mystery, August Stram, this pianistic abortion, a minion of this opera hidden away in a way behind a curtain. Again, mystery. Diabelli, the escapologist and the magician, mystery. And the laughter artist, which is in a way a deeply unconscious Freudian mystery. Berger, in this symbol here with the accordion, he doesn't care about the tact of anything sacred or mysterious. You know, he is this child still saying, I'll just cut open the accordion. I don't really care. I just want to see how that works. And in doing so, he also explicitly acknowledges that he renders impotent the mystery and renders impotent and anxious what we had before. And you in destroying the beauty and destroying the source of whatever that was, in destroying it in such an apt and brash fashion, something new is built, and it's a sort of strange grotesqueness and bitterness and pessimism for the world, in that your simple act of destruction of this accordion reveals all that you knew already, but you had to do it. And this is, again, revealing masks, revealing selves, and finding again and again and again there's nothing there. And this nothingness doesn't seem to lead anywhere for Berger. So just a note on the style, I haven't read anything too super long in terms of excerpts, but it is influenced by Bernhard, and Bernhard has this rhythm that allows you to develop an ear for the difference in these repetitions for Bernhard. There's actually a lot of joy in Bernhard, and actually, in my own opinion, a lot of love in Bernhard that just has this incredible rhythm. Berger is one of the greats when it comes to this set of thinkers. Sebald is one. Trying to think of others that are in this directly influenced by Bernhard in this style. There is many. Berger, I think, is the greatest because he does actually manage to transform it into something that doesn't simply dilute it into something a bit easier. But what Berger transforms it into is in a way the same thing he does with this accordion. He cuts open Bernhard's style and actually, in my opinion, brutalizes it to draw you into grotesque situations, draw you into the unconscious. The lull of the Bernhardian style, which for Bernhard sees you through a party that you never wanted to go to, sees you through the absurdity of the lime works, or sees you through old masters sitting around in an art gallery all day. Fine, that rhythm is needed to get us through this. But Berger takes that, like the accordion, he cuts that style open and says, well, I'm gonna brutalize it and then use it in the case of use and abuse. And all of a sudden this style is lulling you, but next thing you know, where are you? You're in someone's horrific unconscious. You're in Berger's life and you're feeling what Berger feels, and it's not good. So moving through to the final story, which I think is the most intriguing one of the book. I mean, Diabelli is the most accomplished of the book, but The Laughter Artist begins with this. As a child, in point of fact, a freak, incorrigible toyer around with his anchor stone building blocks, he seems, per his cardiologist's pronouncements, to have been nourished on vast helpings of dust. One of his earliest memories, which made an eldritch crunching sound in his recollection apparatus, as he attests, but naturally he needn't lend his words credence, was how his mother, on the advice of her maid, a high-priced whore from Paris, forced him to swallow the cinnamon-red contents of an hourglass after he'd skirted death from whooping cough, to bite into the gilded clepsydra and ingest its shards. And though the autopsy offers no conclusive evidence, it is conceivable that the glass splinters, once lodged in his esophagus, descended along those tortuous paths taken by foreign bodies, which science has yet to illuminate, down into his diaphragm, thus preparing him for his eventual laugh artistry. And if we allude here to the august calling of the artist, derived from ars, artis, skill or craft, we are not, for all that, ignorant of a more cryptic etymology, drawing on the word artis, appendage, whence the term arcuation, meaning to tear limb from limb. The child is born, fed on glass shards, and immediately thrown into an internal castration caused by a whore and given credence by the mother. Berger, you have some issues. You need to see someone. Is an astounding opening to a short story, which is about this child who is then chained to a mattress, basically sort of seemingly being experimented on by his genetologist mother, science's own mistress of penile mythography. To continue from this story, she must have been a ravishing fairy tale teller, a Proustian goodnight kisser, not to mention an astral fairy when she brought him his bedtime sweets. For in the days of his Sahara introductory course he used to mimic her voice, retelling with gusto the tale of the Sandman and the Drusen gnomes sprinkling grains of the desert into the eyes of the boys, fettered to his Jugendstil crib to blind him id est, to block out the sight of his oasis. Steel cuffs chained him to the mattress with its 3 urine-yellow rubber mats to keep him from masturbating while his pretty mother employed her marital bed. The boy's sleeping cage lay in the corner of his parents' room to conduct a fertility test or penis plethysmography on one of her regular patients. In the meantime, her husband, owner of Concordia Funeral Parlour, was off scrubbing the checkerboard floor of the lower rooms to an antiseptic glow. A strand of the child's eventual diaphragmatic virtuosity is to be found, perhaps, in his mother's ribald laughter. Like a coloratura sopranos, when her disputably fertile or infertile patient would fire his sputum into the glass pipette, and in the scandalized weeping of the bonne from Paris, who used to scrounge for a few francs on the Rue de Trips as she carried the sperm samples to the one laboratory in the village. This story is ghastly. It is... You're thrown into... There is, before, no longer Human by Desire that I reviewed before as one of my least favorite books, it still is. There we're given a neutrality that is so sort of potently neutral that you begin to loathe the inaction. Here we are given the opposite. We are given a delve. It's Lynch without the miracle, Lynch without his love. Is the it's the Red Room without any of that care and love in those worlds. It is an unconscionable, amoral, not immoral, amoral darkness of the unconscious that is boiling up for Berger without apology and without being stifled. Berger seems to just channel this in the most original, metaphoric and Freudian, psychoanalytically symbolic forms in the passage of these stories. But it's a paradox of form, because that which is being written about on the surface is that which never should have been on the surface. The notion, all Bergerian notions of escape, of delusion, of hiding, of repression, of impotence, of sexual anxiety, of castration, and of a sort of internal psychoanalytical sexual mutilation, Berger manages to bring these to the surface and put them right in front of you. So it's like this: someone, the great joke again with the accordion, if we think about that in psychoanalytical terms, this unconscious that usually needs all this strange work of free talk and dabbling around and tricking to get it to bubble to the surface in slips or in that lucid form of free talk on the sofa. Berger, much like that accordion metaphor, that accordion symbol, somehow has the means to just cut into his ego and go, here's my unconscious, look how fucked it is, basically. And you as the reader have to deal with that. So, recently I reviewed Fleur Yegi's book, which is a book in a sense of trying not to write. And Diabelli, in the same vein, is a book that you don't want to read. It shouldn't be reading, because it shouldn't have become. But Berger is just fascinating. I mean, it's very difficult to describe Berger, and the more you read, the more nuance and the more little details, and the more you come to understand that his use of Bernhard to go into these weird digressions he goes on about, whether it's cigars, whether it's the opera, whether it's like genitology, whether it's suicide, whatever it might be, he just is like, well, I'm going to talk about this digression. He goes into it. There's so much more depth in there, and it's unfortunate the lack of translation in English, because I think really we do only have these 3 things, but the more I've read, the more nuance and detail there is there, that you're building up the life of this man, this very strange man, who is almost like knows himself too well, and just had to end because the much like Diabelli, he knew himself to a degree that he just didn't know himself. That sounds like a paradox, but it's in all the masks, and what was left at the end? Nothing but some sort of trick and a joke. Those are my thoughts anyway on Diabelli by Hermann Berger, published by, once again, big thank you to Wakefield Press. It's another beautiful little edition from Wakefield. They really do produce beautiful books, and I'm a big fan of their publishers, so big thank you to them. And of course, also Adrian Nathan West, the translator, if you want to listen to our discussion about Hermann Berger's life and work. I will put the link for that in the description below. But that are my thoughts of the rather elusive, dark, and macabrely mysterious Diabelli by Hermann Berger. So thank you for listening.